What's going on, y'all? Your boy Bowie's here. And I don't know what was causing me to think this, but I was going to make a video wherein I excoriated both the Democratic and Republican parties of America because our two-party political system is trash in America right now. It's been trash for a very long time. And the majority of people are too invested in playing partisan cheerleaders to see that. I was going to get into all the reasons why each party is utterly incapable of representing regular people. I mean, not even that they're incapable, they're unwilling to do it, you know? But then I had a revelation. I realized that something has to be fueling this, you know? There is a reason why so many people decide to be cheerleaders for one side over the other. Despite the glaring wrongdoings and weaknesses that each party has. Like, you have terrible politicians that engage in these horrific scandals, and folks that are dedicated to that politician's party just don't give a damn about that. They act like that boy don't exist, or girl. Their favorite politicians in their they're a politician in their preferred party can sit there and they can make ludicrous false statements over the internet or even in interviews or whatever, and the people that should care do not. And I realized that that's what's fueling this, because as trash as the Republican and Democratic parties are, they could not exist in their current form if the people did better. And if the people that they supposedly represented were better. And so I'm gonna dig into some heavy stuff today. And hopefully this video doesn't, I don't think this video's even got a large enough audience for it to be taken down for what I'm gonna say, but if it does, so be it. The reason why both of these parties are trash is because of whiteness. Now, let me put a disclaimer out there before I even dig into this. Whiteness has nothing to do with someone having white skin, because some of the biggest perpetrators of whiteness are people of color. People that don't have any white, they don't have any white skin at all. They've adopted the supremacy of whiteness, but they themselves are not white. See, whiteness has nothing to do with somebody being Caucasian, because I have Caucasian family members, I have Caucasian friends, Caucasian teachers and students who have shown lots of love to me my entire life and whom I love dearly. They have not adopted whiteness, though. whiteness is not their default state. They have white skin. They are Caucasian, like I said, but they have not adopted this attitude of whiteness, because that's what whiteness really is. It's an attitude. It's almost a methodology, if you will, or a religion. That's probably the best way to describe it, is a religion. You know what I mean? And it's like an orthodox religion. That's probably the best way to describe it. Where you don't care what happens to anyone or anything in this country, as long as you and your white family can remain in power. You and other white institutions that you support can remain in power, is the basic gist of it. But there's a lot more than just that. And so that religion, that orthodoxy, that school of thought that certain people have decided to adopt, that has nothing to do with somebody's skin color being pale. Because like I say, I have so many examples, personal examples of Caucasian people that do not adopt this attitude. They don't co-sign onto this. I'm not talking about them and people like them. These are people that recognize that whiteness is a problem. And I think, the academic terms for this would give it more clarity. But when folks refer to it as being white as a problem, that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about, oh, your white skin is an issue. No one gives a damn about your skin color. I don't want to have to give a damn about that. The skin color is not important, because all that is an organ that either has or does not have enough melanin. But I think I played the same video again. This is the third video, and I remember seeing all of this. Jesus. Whatever. So, yeah, as I was saying, your skin is an organ. If it has a lot of melanin, it's dark. If it doesn't have enough, it's white. That alone doesn't determine a damn thing. And that's not important. But if you adopt certain attitudes about people and about yourself based on your melanin content, that mentality is a problem. That whole way of thinking is a problem. And it has to be addressed. And so that's why I'm talking about this. Because without whiteness, you don't even have the Republican Party. As a matter of fact, I will go as far as to say that the Republican Party especially, but both parties generally, are parties of whiteness. The Republican is the full-on whiteness party. This is the party of people that want to retain as much of their whiteness as humanly possible. They want white men to be in control of everything. They want their women to be silent and passive. They want their women to be seen but not heard, and everybody has to be on bended knee because they're going to occupy all the seats at the table and nobody else has any right to even be at said table. That's trash. You know what I mean? Now, the Democrats are a little bit better at this. They're not actively trying to be white, but because they're bound to corporate money and they bend to the will of their corporate paymasters, who are the primary perpetrators of whiteness, this makes them an unwitting agent. Well, I ain't gonna say unwitting. This makes them an agent of the preservation of whiteness. Because whiteness really benefits the hyper rich. Because it was they that came up with the concept to begin with. See, because what happened was early, and I don't even want to say, I mean, I don't think it really begins in America, honestly. It began overseas, in Europe. But it made its way to America, and then it became uniquely American. But what happened was, hyper rich people all the way back then wanted to do exactly what they're doing now, which is hoard vast sums of wealth, keep it away from the public and people. They wanted to keep, exorbitant amounts of money, more money than they could ever spend, more money than they could ever need. And they wanted to keep as much of that to themselves as humanly possible. But in order to do that, you have to have the buy-in of the people who you're stealing the money from. Because in order for one people to have billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, other people have to be flat broke and in poverty. Nobody would ever accept that. Nobody would on its own. So in order for that to become acceptable, you have to create an ideology that at once justifies rich people having their money and also encourages poor people to allow and encourage those rich people to have all their money. You know what I'm saying? How do you do that? Well, it's simple. You take the poor people and you divide them. Well, how do you divide them? They're all doing agrarian, back-breaking labor, having to do with, being out in the field and slaving away in the sun and all that. How do you divide those people? They should be completely united with their, shared plight. Well, you can divide them by skin color. That's the most obvious difference between them. And none of this is like conscious or deliberate necessarily. Like, it's not some nefarious plot that an author sat there and said, this is what I'm going to do today. Like, that's not how it worked. This was formed out of necessity. You know what I'm saying? Because, as I said, these hyper-rich people needed some sort of gimmick to employ on the masses in order to justify them hoarding vast sums of wealth. And that gimmick is, hey, you and I, look at our skin color. We're white. We come from the greatest race of people on this earth. Everybody else is a peasant. Everybody else is beneath us somehow. And those darkies over there, they're not even human. They're the lowest of the low. You know what I mean? And so you have generations and generations and generations of people, the majority of whom were Caucasian, but not exclusively, who adopted this attitude of whiteness where, hey, if I do what these hyper rich people did, if I work hard and, don't pay tax and do all this stuff, I can become rich like them. No, you can't. They're just like me. They have the same skin color as I do. They come from where I come from. No, they don't. They have your skin color, but they hoarded vast sums of wealth from you. And they started with that wealth and passed it on to their children. They exploited your labor and a whole bunch of other people's labor to get that wealth. You're not going to compete with that unless you start exploiting people too. And I guess you could exploit people eventually, but it doesn't work out very well for the majority of folks. All it does is ruin your reputation. But anyway, my point is, you have people that adopted that attitude, poor folks that weren't any better off than black people, except for the fact that they weren't slaves. I mean, black people definitely had it worse. But the labor that poor whites was doing was virtually identical to slave labor in all the ways that count. The only difference was that nobody was whipping them over the back and forcing them to do that from childbirth. They weren't forced into a system that forced them to work for free for a master. So that's the main difference. But as far as the kind of work, the kind of labor they were doing, it's identical. In terms of the living conditions of the people, the two groups of people, it was identical. Especially during Reconstruction, you had a bunch of freed slaves and poor whites. Now they finally had to compete for the same kinds of jobs. They were identical, just like now. These groups of people, these two groups of people are really one group. But here's the thing, whiteness does not allow folks to see that. Because when you adopt whiteness as a religion, one of the first things you learn is that the world is your onion. The world and everyone and everything in it belongs to you. It is yours to do with as you please, basically. And so, if you're born with the attitude that you can do and say anything you want to whomever you want, there's no way for you to accept the sameness of somebody as yourself. There's no way for you to truly believe that all people are created equal, because you don't believe in that inherently. Now, a lot of advocates of whiteness say they believe in it. They'll tell you real quick, all men are created equal. God created us all equally. They'll say that, but then when police are out here, shooting up black people disproportionately, they'll find some kind of way to justify it. When you have Mexican and South and Central American refugees fleeing to the American border in no small part due to our government's interference in their native countries' governments, contributing to their insane rates of poverty and corruption and crime and gang influence and occupation, like I said, which was caused due in large part to our government's interference with their stuff. We don't see the humanity in those people. Whiteness doesn't allow those people to be the same as anybody else looking for a better life. They're no better. They're not better or as good as the folks that went to Ellis Island in the 17 and 1800s and stuff like that. They don't see those folks the same way for whatever reason. Well, it ain't not for whatever reason, but because of the reason of whiteness. That boy was mashing hard. Jesus. But yeah, whiteness does not allow for the existence of any other equivalent group of people. Those that are adopters of whiteness are the superior people. They are in control because that's how God designed it. Now, they're not going to be honest. Well, most people are not going to be honest enough to say this stuff out loud. The ones that are really honest about it are the open racists, the supremacists, the neo-Nazis, all those guys. Those are the only people that are going to be truly honest about this. And that's a shame. But they're the ones enjoying their religion out loud, more or less. But the other adherents sit there and pay lip service to opposing points of view. But behind closed doors, it ain't even really closed that much, but anyway, behind closed doors, they worship at the altar of whiteness too. But this is the attitude that makes people think that they can just say what they want to say to women, that they can just do with them what they please. Because whiteness doesn't allow you to see a woman as anything else other than a possession for you to do with what you please if you're a man. And if you're a woman, your job is to be as desirable to men as you can be. And then once you make yourself as attractive as possible, then you become subservient to your guy, have as many of his babies as you want, or as he wants, and your job is to then bear those children, raise them, give the man no hell, give him carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wants to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, all that. That's all facets of whiteness, honestly. And I'm going to reiterate this because it's true. You don't. Whiteness is not about actually being white or being Caucasian, because some of the biggest adherents to whiteness are people that are not white. You got plenty of black men that say they love their black queens and black women, so long as those black women behave the way they want white women to behave. So long as those black women subscribe to whiteness. Your job is to be attracted to and exclusively date black men, be fine as hell, have all the dimensions that a man wants. You should be attractive enough to draw any man to you, but you can't date any man you want. You gotta date just one man. You know. And then once you date that man, you put up with all his shit, whatever he got going on, you put up with it. You do what he says to do, bear his children, raise his children. And while you're doing all this, you still gotta look like that dime piece that you were when y'all met, and all that kind of stuff. So there's no room for black lesbians and bisexual women. There's no room for black women that, you know, want to run things of their own their own business, be their own success story. There's certainly not enough room for black women that don't want children, because that doesn't fit into the narrative. And there's no room for black women that aren't just going to be subservient to somebody, that want some semblance of equality in their relationship. Now, this is a complex topic because different dudes want different aspects of whiteness. It's very rare that a guy just wants all these aspects at once, like all the qualities I just described that they want their women to have and to be. It's very rare that they want all of that at once. Most of the time they just want pieces of it. They want some qualities and not necessarily the others. Or they might want 2 of the qualities and not the other 6 or 7 that I named, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, not everybody is identical in that way, but they all want aspects of it, though. And like I said, this is within the black community. These people ain't white. They still got to deal with all the stuff that comes with being a black person, but they've adopted whiteness as their attitude. They think they can talk to women any kind of way, treat them any kind of way, you know, because women are their possessions, to be seen and not heard, and all this kind of stuff. All that. It's shameful. But I just have to throw that out there, because as I'm talking about this, people might get triggered thinking I'm just talking greasy about white people. No. Again, this ain't got nothing to do with you being white or not being white. Because as I said, not everybody that's Caucasian subscribes to this. I've had so many white people in my life that have rejected this. They've rejected this mentality and religion because it's trash. Nano, stay out of that window. They've rejected it for the garbage that it is. It is garbage. But, whiteness does not allow for the equality of people. Um, Whiteness, one other thing that whiteness does is it unites its adherents to allegiance only with themselves and members of their in-group. You don't belong to the human community or the human race. You belong to whiteness. And that has dangerous implications. Like, one thing that America and Americans have struggled with is this tug of war between being a group of united Americans versus being rugged individualists who all want their freedom. Right? But why is it a struggle? One of the reasons it's such a struggle is because whiteness won't allow folks, whiteness does not allow for integration between individuals. So in other words, if you're somebody that believes in the purity of their whiteness, someone who is not an adherent of whiteness is not a part of your community. They're not a part of your in-group, nothing. You don't owe them squat. Even if they're your fellow American, you don't owe them a damn thing. At least that's the mentality that they have. You don't even have to defend and uphold their freedoms. The same freedoms that you say that they have, you don't even have to uphold them. Because as, an adherent of whiteness, you believe in government tyranny. You believe, well, actually no, you don't believe in government tyranny. You believe in the possibility of government tyranny. And you believe that people should be armed in order to protect themselves from government tyranny. Unless it's literal government agents bursting into people's houses and kidnapping Spanish-speaking folks. Or if it's federal agents swooping down in Oregon to snatch up Black Lives Matter protesters. Because that happened. That happened last year. During the protests surrounding George Floyd, you had literal government agents grabbing protesters and putting them in the back of vans and stuff. And all these people, all these, scholars of whiteness that say that they believe that government tyranny shouldn't exist and that people have a right to sovereignty and all that kind of stuff, them folks wasn't nowhere to be found. Nowhere. And when ICE snatches up Spanish-speaking people, holds them against their will, and deports them, some of whom are actually American citizens, you're going to deport people back to a country that they're not even familiar with, that they've never lived in their entire lives, and take their children and make those children defend themselves in court. Yeah, that's government tyranny right there. But the tyranny ain't tyranny when it's happening to someone that's not an adherent of whiteness. If it's somebody that's not in your in group, you don't give a fuck. You don't care what happens to them. Because they're not one of you, so the tyranny is perfectly fine by you now. This happens also a lot in the area of guns. They say they love and believe in gun ownership, but when you have a citizen that is killed by police because they said that they had a registered weapon and the police got jumpy and murdered them, you're not there to advocate for gun ownership for that person. They don't give a damn at that point. Wow. So they don't have a sense of community. They only have community only to themselves and their in group. They only care about themselves and their clique, basically, more or less, you know. And that's very dangerous. Because as I've described in previous videos, anything that can happen to one group of people can happen to all groups of people. If a federal agency such as ICE can storm in Spanish people's doors and take their children and deport them without any government interference or accountability to any agency, they can do it to black people too. They can do it to white people too. Right now it's about immigration, but they can invent some other issue to snatch other groups of people up for. And then suddenly we'll be out here justifying this agency snatching up white people. Well, that ain't gonna happen. Well, maybe it might actually. Because if the white people they're snatching happen to be Black Lives Matter protesters, then the whiteness people aren't gonna give a damn. Just like they didn't care when Kyle Rittenhouse killed two people in front of, he drove out of state underage with weapons he's not supposed to even have, killed some protesters. But those protesters rejected whiteness, so they didn't give a damn. And that's what's trash about it. So whiteness does not allow for the existence of a human community, even though that's what we are a part of. Especially if you say you're a Christian. Because as a Christian, you're supposed to believe that we are all God's children. And the thing about children is, you're supposed to love all your children the same. All your children are supposed to be equally valuable. You don't have one child that you love more than the others, or that's more valuable than the next child. That's not supposed to happen. Wow! I was so mad when that happened. Freaking armor, bro. Jesus Christ. But anyway. But the whiteness people think that they are the children of God and that other people may or may not be the children of God, but they're the best child. They're the greatest child. Firstborn and only born as far as they're concerned. And like I said, this has very dangerous implications. Because when you have an atrocity that happens to one group of people that is not a part of the clique, they'll just let that rock. They'll let it rock. It ain't in my group. I don't care. Oh my God, bro. Oh. So, whiteness does not allow different groups of people to be equally equal. And it doesn't allow for you to, form a community with these people. The other dangerous thing about whiteness, and I alluded to it before, is that whiteness only cares about the preservation of whiteness. So whatever you got to do to justify preserving whiteness, you do that in that moment. And if you have to do the opposite to preserve whiteness the next time around, then you do that. So here's where the political part comes into play. The majority of people that subscribe to whiteness also happen to be conservative. They're conservative. Because conservatism, like I say, the Republican Party is the party of whiteness. The majority of its adherents are white people. But they all believe in the sanctity of whiteness as a philosophy. And so, what happens is, for the longest time, conservatives said that they believed in family values. After the Bill Clinton scandal with Monica Lewinsky, and actually before that, the Republicans and conservatives have branded themselves the Christian party, more or less. They're the ones that actually believe in Christ. They're the ones that believe in decency and morality and purity. They're the ones that, quote unquote, vote with their conscience and all that kind of stuff. Their morals won't allow them to accept the ideas of abortion and all this kind of stuff. All of this is done from a very, quote unquote, moral standpoint, right? Okay. But who's their most popular politician? Who's their favorite guy? Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump is a guy who's been married 3 times. He's a guy that is completely non-religious. I mean, he'll turn around and say, yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe in God and Jesus. That's easy to say, but his actions do not align with someone that's a believer in Christ. So he doesn't believe in that. He's a guy who has lusted after his own daughter in public before. He said his daughter has nice legs, and if she weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. Like, I've heard him say this. He's been accused of sexual harassment and rape by like dozens, like at least a dozen women. He's a guy that does crooked business. You know, he's being openly investigated for fraud right now. He's been sued by the government for racism and fraud on separate occasions. And he's a guy who said that you could just grab women by their vaginas on camera as a married man. The guy's the antithesis of morality and purity. But conservatives were supposed to be the party of Christianity, morality, and purity. They're the party of family values. This is what they themselves prided themselves on. They use those arguments when gay couples want to have children, because that's immoral. As a matter of fact, to them, homosexuality is immoral. Abortion is immoral. Like, they make moralistic arguments for things and against things. So they are the morality and purity party. But now that they support Donald Trump, now they turn around and say, well, we didn't, we're not electing an angel. Oh! So do you not believe in purity and morality anymore? Oh no, we still believe in it, because they still make those same arguments against abortion and all these other things. But they turn around and support Donald Trump too. And you'd be like, well, wait a minute. In what universe is that possible? Does the hypocrisy not mean anything to them? In a word, no. Because, as I said, whiteness only cares about its own self-preservation. These people are going to go along with whatever allows them to preserve their whiteness. Oh, I could have won that. They're going to ride whatever wave allows them to keep whiteness at the top of the pyramid. And so whatever they got to do, whatever they got to co-sign, or whomever they have to attach themselves to in order to get to that destination, they gonna do it. Another case in point, police. These people are the biggest proponents of police you've ever seen. They even went and made their own damn flag. So instead of rocking the American flag, or sometimes they'll rock the American flag side by side with this one, they have a caricature of the American flag, but instead of it being red, white, and blue, it's black and white, and then there's a blue line. The blue line's supposed to represent the line, it's supposed to represent police. On one side of the line is the regular good people, and on the other side of the line is the bad guys. Innocent people and the bad guys. The police are supposed to be the blue line between them, right? Okay. So they say that they support cops. And why are they supporting cops? Because the cops are keeping those non-clique members in check. Those dissident black people that are not a part of our group. The police are keeping those guys in check. So we ain't got to care what happens to them. They're not a part of our clique. We don't give a fuck. You know, the police are there to keep those Negroes in check. Okay. And of course, they don't say Negroes. That's why they rock with them. It's like, okay. But then on January 6th, Donald Trump fans stormed and breached the Capitol building. They attacked and even killed Capitol police officers. All because they wanted to reverse the results of the 2020 election. And they thought if they broke into Congress and demanded things be different, and they acted like a bunch of wild hooligans, that they would get their wish. That's what they swore. It was stupid. It didn't fit within the confines of reality. And it failed. But that's what they thought. So they did all that stuff for Donald Trump. But in the process, who did they harm? Police. These people killed police officers. And that's supposed to be something that's against their religion. We thought they loved police. We thought they supported cops. They don't. They support cops when the cops are suppressing non-group members, and they don't support cops when they are. See, because in that moment on the January the 6th, the cops were standing in the way of what they wanted. They wanted to put Trump back in power. And the police stood in the way. You know what I'm saying? So these people don't support cops either. They support police up until the point that they stop keeping black people in check. When the police stop being the buffer between themselves and black and Spanish people, they ain't gonna support police no more. And so that's an important facet of this as well. Like I say, but it's not even just about police. It's about whiteness. Whiteness is at the core of all of this. Because if you're an adherent of whiteness, everybody else has to be suppressed. People that don't believe in whiteness have to be silenced and marginalized. And so whatever you got to do to keep them people in check, whatever you got to use or whomever you got to use to keep them people in check, you use them. Because the world is yours and everyone belongs to you anyway, right? You know. So That's the core of what's wrong. Yes, the Republican Party is terrible. Yes, the Democratic Party is a diet form of the Republican Party, so it's also terrible. But these parties couldn't exist in their current forms without the people. Without the people subscribing to whiteness. Because if they didn't, their foolery wouldn't even be allowed to persist for this long. Big problems in this country are treated as though they're not big problems until they happen to white folks. And when I say white folks, again, I'm not talking about everyone that happens to be Caucasian. I'm talking about the adherents of whiteness. When those people are affected by a problem, then it's a real legitimate problem. You know? Such as the opioid thing. When you had drug epidemics affecting mostly black and Spanish speaking people, those people were rounded up and locked the hell up. Treated like creatures in the street. Criminals, dissidents, amoral, all of that. There was a whole bunch of federal laws enacted in order to make crack more criminal than cocaine, even though they're the same goddamn chemical. And the only difference between them is the fact that crack was crystallized and cocaine is powder. But then the other difference between them is that black people primarily used crack, or crack was preferred by black folks, and cocaine, powdered cocaine, was preferred by whites because it's more expensive and shit. You know. There was federal legislation, state and federal legislation, that criminalized both of those drugs differently. And put hounds of police in these neighborhoods in order to keep folks safe from that, quote unquote. Really, it was to put them in prison and get free labor, but we're not going to talk about that. And one of the proponents of putting a whole bunch of folks in jail over drugs is now our current president of the United States, Joseph R. Biden. As a matter of fact, that's basically his legislative claim to fame. The 1994 crime bill. You know? I'll be doing a video on Mr. Biden soon. Because, he's an adherent of whiteness too. And this is where the Democrats come into play. Because this whole video has been about Republican Party voters, more or less, and their attitudes. But the problem is, them same folks are active in the Democratic Party as well. And you have far too many people that throw their support behind these folks. Not knowing or not caring about the fact that they're secretly aligned to the religion of whiteness. You know what I'm saying? And that's dangerous because whiteness is a existential threat not only to black and Spanish people and everybody, Asian people, Native American people, gay people. Whiteness is an existential threat to all of them. It's even a threat to other white people, to be honest with you. whiteness is a threat even to its own adherents. That's the craziest thing about all of this. But whiteness is in the Democratic Party too. How does whiteness show up there? Well, you have these progressive representatives of color who are affectionately known as the Squad, though they're not in a lot of people's good graces these days, for reasons I won't get into. But all the members of the Squad are women of color. You have one black woman, a Spanish woman, you have a Somalian refugee, so she's Muslim, but I'm just going to go ahead and call her black, because Somalia is in Africa last time I checked. So she's black too. And if I'm not mistaken, the other lady is Indonesian, but I could be wrong. I gotta double check. She's much less vocal than the other three. But my point is, all of these women are people of color elected by their districts. Elected in strong numbers, by the way. Because they really represent the will of their voters. Yet, anytime they have a proposal, you have rich MFs like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer that find ways to undermine them and shut them down. And then have the nerve to say that the Democratic Party is a big tent party. Oh, they'll do the virtue signaling. They'll use inclusive language to perform the idea of inclusivity. But make no mistake, if you're not there to serve corporate power, aka if you're not there to appease the big paymasters of whiteness in this country, they don't want to hear your ass. Especially if you're colored. They ain't got nothing for you. They ain't got no talking for you. As a matter of fact, they don't want you to do any talking. And they too will line up behind other authors of whiteness and adherents of whiteness. People like Michael Bloomberg. The guy's a Republican who switched to the Democratic Party. His greatest claim to fame, while being mayor of New York, was stop and frisk, which was deemed unconstitutional. Basically, police were allowed to stop and frisk young black and Spanish men of color in New York City. They were allowed to stop you just cause and arrest you for whatever contraband you had in your pockets. That's one of the whitest things ever. Because they didn't stop young white boys to check what kind of contraband they had. Because they, quote unquote, didn't live in the criminal areas. They go where the crime is. No. Not all crime happens exclusively in black and Latin neighborhoods. That's not how that works. A good chunk of crime goes unreported in white neighborhoods. because white and black people use drugs at the same damn rate. But black people get arrested for it more. That's the data. But, oh, wow. I forgot that even happened. Oh, shoot. I should end the video on this, but I ain't gonna do it. He knew he was dead. But, stop and frisk is one of the whitest policies that has ever existed. Because literally, you could sit there and violate somebody's Fourth Amendment rights to unreasonable search and seizure just on the basis of skin color. That's one of the most draconian things ever. And here's the thing, Bloomberg defended this for a very long time, and he still sits there and makes excuses for it even to this day. He's apologized, but he apologized conveniently as he was looking like the Democratic frontrunner for president in 2020. But all before that, he didn't give a good goddamn about that. He was completely unrepentant about stop and frisk, just like Joe Biden was unrepentant and still is unrepentant about the crime bill. Joe Biden lies about what the crime bill does, or what it did, and the effect that it had. You know, he upplays the benefits and downplays the negatives, because that crime bill directly contributed to the situation we have today with police officers killing black folks. Because one of the things the crime bill did was it drastically increased the number of police in these neighborhoods. So what happens when you have to hire more people? You start hiring less qualified people to do a task because you're just trying to get them numbers up. You don't care. You don't give a good goddamn what they do or what background they have. If they're white supremacists, so be it. If they got anger problems, so what? You know? Oh my God. Whatever issues they have, you don't have to care about that. You know? And when you have hundreds of thousands of those kind of police on the streets, all there to keep black people under control, you're going to have these situations where we're out here getting killed unnecessarily. And so Joe Biden has directly contributed to that. And Michael Bloomberg directly contributed to that. And I was faced with a question almost 2 years ago. If Michael Bloomberg became the nominee of the Democratic Party, would I support him? I said, hell no. As a black man, no. I can't support somebody that made a law that would have had the police frisk me just because of my skin. No. I don't give a damn what letter he has next to his name. I know his history. I know the policies that he's instituted. Those policies were anti-black and pro-whiteness. I will not support that. And so I had to draw a line in the sand. And that made me unpopular for a second. I had never argued with that many people over the internet in my life. But why was I doing that? Because I'm arguing against whiteness. I'm not going to support any politician that's going to uphold whiteness and white supremacy and then turn around and ask for my vote thereafter. They can kiss my ass. That person is worse than a Republican to me, because you have the nerve to throw me under the bus when it's politically expedient, and then turn around and say that if I don't vote for you, I ain't black. Or you have the nerve to, you have the nerve to sit there and try to pander to me and my people with what you think we want, instead of listening to what we want. We're telling you what we want. We want free college. We want reparations. We want police. We want a complete overhaul of the criminal justice system and the police system. We want cops to go to jail, prison, if they kill us unarmed. We want these dramatic changes. I don't know what this dude was doing. He ain't do nothing. That's stupid. We want you to use executive order to institute $15 an hour minimum wage, because that's going to help black people. You don't want to do nothing to help these communities that have been affected by whiteness. It ain't because, oh, we're just black and we just deserve things because of our color. It's because we've been malaffected. As I stated, we had federal legislation that mandated that we get treated worse in particular scenarios and situations. What part of the game is that? What part of the game is that? You have to fix that. You got to put the same effort that it took to mess folks up. You got to put that same effort back in, actually more effort, to fix what was broken. Because it always takes more effort to fix something that you broke than it did to break it. But whiteness doesn't care nothing about that. And the adherents of whiteness, they don't give a damn who they affect. They just want to remain on top by any means necessary. And so when those folks have an R next to their name, they don't even get the time of day from me. I'm like, I don't give a damn about you. I know what you're about. You can't get my vote because you don't even care about the things that are important to me. My priorities are a joke to you. And you'll come out and say that that's what they are. So I appreciate your honesty. But when these whiteness people have a D next to their name, now it's more pernicious. Now they're going to try to use quote-unquote woke language. Then they're going to engage in the symbolism of agreeing with me on the policies. But then they ain't going to give me the policies. So you'll see Nancy Pelosi dressed in a dashiki and other folks like her, and you'll see them kneel in some sort of ceremonial, symbolic gesture. But then when they get in office, they're going to balloon police budgets. They're going to give more money to cops. Not less. They're going to give them more money. They're going to push these milquetoast, slightly colder than lukewarm legislation that doesn't fundamentally change how police conduct themselves against black people. You know. But that's whiteness. That's whiteness. There's no other way to describe it, to be honest, you know? So, whiteness has infiltrated the Democratic Party just as well as the Republican Party. And this is not some new phenomenon. This has been around forever. But we're starting to come to terms with it now. We're starting to have names for it now. We're starting to really see this for what it is. And this is where I have to applaud the young generation, because the kids that are my students' age, they know something's afoot. And even a lot of people my age, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of people my age and thereabouts, they understand that this Democratic Party's not their friend. And the Republican Party's not their friend. What they may not be able to articulate right now is the fact that it's because whiteness is not their friend. Whiteness is not your friend. Whiteness only cares about its own preservation. If whiteness were an organism, it would be a virus. Whiteness doesn't even care about white people. Because it ain't just black people getting murdered by police. It's white folks too. It ain't just black people that are in poverty. It's white people too. As I stated, if Spanish people can be rounded up by the ICE agency and have them and their children deported to countries they've never even lived in or haven't lived in decades, that same agency or another agency just like it can do the same thing to white people. But they don't hear that though. That's the part of the equation they not understanding. Because they are too devoted to that whiteness to be broken out of it. They're going to have to be burned in order to recognize that the oven is hot. You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay. And that's the part of this that is probably the most painful to recognize, is that these people aren't going to change their mind. It doesn't matter what kind of arguments we come up with. Even this video is not going to change their mind. I mean, someone that's embroiled in whiteness wouldn't have even made it this far into the video, to be honest. Someone that's knee deep in it and happy that they're there. Someone that's happily wallowing in the mud, murky mud of whiteness. They're not gonna give a damn. You could show them how they're being mal-affected by this, and they ain't gonna change. Because now what they've decided to do is they've just decided to outright reject reality. Objective facts don't exist to them. I saw somebody say that facts are just opinions that everybody agrees upon. So I guess it's my opinion and a whole bunch of people's collective opinion that 2 + 2 is 4. I guess we just all decided. We all got into a meeting and decided that to be true. We didn't observe this in nature, backed up with, irrefutable proof. I guess that didn't happen. We just all agreed that this is how things were going to be. But think about how dangerous that mentality is. If we're going to sit here and conflate facts and opinions, and we're going to reduce facts to merely modified opinions, then there is no reality. Reality is whatever we say each individual says that it is. That means that their reality is not even real. They ain't gonna recognize that though. But it's sad to say this, but I do feel like a lot of these people are a lost cause. They're lost until they decide to get found, until something forces their hand. It's not that you don't try to talk to them, but you have to realize that there's nothing you can really say to them that's going to spell it out for them clear enough to reject it. Because they feel like their existence is tied up with whiteness. They feel like it's in their own best interest to adhere to this. And the reality is it's not. Because when you let the billionaire and billionaire class decide how the rest of us live, it's always going to be at our expense. Always, every single time. You let these big businesses merge up together and pollute our air and take up all our land and build in our neighborhoods tax-free, and you let them not only pay less taxes than us, but then they get to keep more of their money and buy golden toilets and things that they don't need. You decide to let all that happen. None of that's ever going to benefit the regular person. Mr. White Man, Mr. Whiteness Man. You will never benefit from this. Never in life. You will never benefit from this ever in life. Never. But there's nothing that somebody like me can say to them that's going to spell it out for them. And if there is, I ain't figured it out yet. but oh, I remember these matches. I just think it's oh, that was bad. I just think that it's up to the rest of us to recognize what the real enemy is. And the enemy's not even these people, like the adherents themselves. I mean, they're a problem. They're definitely an issue. And until they disentangle themselves from it, they're going to keep being an issue. You know what I'm saying? But we gotta recognize that their existence is not problematic. You know, you don't want to disown them and not help them or nothing like that. It's just that, oh my God, I was right there, bro. Wow. It's just that we have to be keenly aware of what is going on and what to do about what's going on. And we have to work to disentangle this whiteness from every motherfucking asset and facet of our society. We have to disentangle it. I don't care how we do it. We just got to do it. We got to. We have to. Because it's going to kill us all. I mean, we might not even literally have a planet in 100 years. I mean, I'll be gone by then. But should I have descendants, I want them to have a planet. You know what I mean? Like, but because the primary purveyors of whiteness, millionaires and billionaires and trillionaires, want to keep their money polluting our air, and these big industries want to keep doing what they do with no regard to the environment or our planet or nothing like that. Our politicians do nothing about global warming. I mean, we had to change the whole name of what was happening. We had to change it to climate change. I mean, it's a more accurate assessment of what's going on, but why is the climate changing? Because it's getting warmer. The Earth's temperature is literally rising. Is the hottest temperature ever recorded. Every year is a new high. And that has severe effects on everything. I mean, Texas just had a freaking snowstorm and everything froze over. Their electrical grid froze over. All that. And we're still feeling the effects of that now, and Biden is being blamed for it. Oh, Biden got these gas prices and all these prices of... Biden ain't got nothing to do with that. Biden's a piece of shit. But he's not the reason for that particular season. But if you want to blame somebody, blame whiteness. Really. Like, for real, for real. Because the whiteness exhibited by these companies and these billionaires and these CEOs, and the whiteness exhibited by these regular conservative constituents, won't allow them to acknowledge reality. And so this stuff is a threat to us all. And so we got to recognize it for what it is. And it ain't the people. Like I said, it ain't white people themselves that are the threat. Because you have plenty of decent white people that have rejected this. They've rejected this outright. Or they're doing their best. But even they are encountering trouble because they have whiteness in their family. Sometimes it's their own parents. Like, about a year ago, I talked about one of my good friends from high school who was more or less disowned by her family because she stood in full and firm solidarity for, Black Lives Matter. Her and other people like her, they have a very tough task because their parents, this is your parent, bro. Like, you know how hard it is to convince your parents to do anything as a child? It's all but impossible. Oh my God, I could have won. I should have did forward 3. Oh my God, I could have won. But anyway, it's so hard to get your parents to do anything. And to convince them, not only are they wrong about their mentality, but then they have to change their actions too? Shoot. That's rough. That's hard to do. It's borderline impossible. I should have kept the pressure going. Ooh. See, he doesn't have no really good whiff punishing tool from that range. I could have probably tried forward 4. But anyway. You got a bunch of folks, bunch of people that happen to be white dealing with that problem. Where they're trying to deprogram people in their family and they're finding that task Herculean because it is. Oh, I could have. Oh my God. Should have straight up interrupted. Oh, you punk. I'ma whoop yo punk ace. Yeah. But, so I feel for them. For them folks that are trying to do right, basically. And they have to potentially even lose family members due to whiteness because those family members don't want to let go of that privilege, or they're, they don't want to, you know what I'm saying? Oh, I remember what happened here. So what happened was he tried to make me pick Shao Kahn. Actually, what he did in this particular match was he tried to counterpick me. And so he hovered over Jackie and I hovered over Sub-Zero. I just didn't even move my cursor. He don't realize that it's hovering right over my main character. So anyway. But yeah, I feel for those people. but they're doing exactly what they ought to do. You gotta disentangle, do your very best to disentangle the folks that you know from the vines of whiteness, because it's a disease, yo. It's a virus, like I say. It is a virus that has infected America. And it ain't just white people that are afflicted with it. Oh, that was bad. Because as I described, it's black people. Even Spanish people are affected by this as well. Let's not get it twisted. Because you have certain groups of Spanish-speaking people that don't even want to acknowledge the reality that they are Latino. And they will never be white, no matter what they do. No matter how much they code switch at work, no matter how they decide to latch on to conservative ideals and all that, you're not going to be white, bro. I don't give a damn what you do. No matter how much you reject your native culture or native language, you're not gonna ever be fully accepted as a member of the whiteness clique. It ain't gonna happen. And they don't recognize that either. So yeah, over here, this boy tried to tell me that I needed to pick Shao Kahn. Like he hovered over Shao Kahn and mashed on Shao Kahn, trying to pick his character and mine at the same time. Like, bro, you don't control my character. I do. You pick your guy, I pick mine. May the best man win. You want me to keep playing as Shao Kahn? You keep playing as your character. Mm. Mm. I should have did the overhead. Oh my god. Punk. If you're gonna play Sub-Zero, play the boy. Punk. I don't know what the hell you doing. You gonna pick my character and not even do as good as I did. Your little monkey ass. Oh, I thought I was gonna be able to whiff. Ooh, yeet. Or make him whiff. Ooh, I should have let him do it. Oh! I could have got a KB right there if I held it. Interesting. I don't even think I meant to uppercut right there. He tried to bait me to break. Jesus Christ. Ooh. I tried to do that whole joint. Yeah. So I'm going to end the video here. Whiteness is plaguing this country. It's plagued our politics. And the very best thing that the rest of us can do is be aware of its effects. Know how to determine who's an adherent and who's not. And do our very best to avoid them folks as much as we can. You interact with them, of course, when you have to, but don't get sucked into their shit. And don't let them destroy the nice things that we could have. You know what I mean? So we have to be vigilant. We have to be bold. We have to be aware. And, we got to be fully prescient and fully present. So that's my public service announcement. I'll catch y'all later. one.